Good evening, Julian McBain here, and tonight I am presenting my 6th Saturday vlog. Real quick, just the setup for tonight's vlog. I am over by Fort Fury and I will be hunting Phoephoids while I chat. And we're going to kind of continue along the thread of the theory of knowledge, which I've touched upon in the last, couple of vodcasts, and as we kind of carve out our niche here. But I was watching a series on the theory of knowledge because as I was trying to unpack all of the things I've been learning in the psychology lectures I've been listening to and watching on YouTube and things like that, it occurred to me that I don't really know how we internalize that knowledge. And so I went looking for an answer. And what I found was a rather interesting set of philosophies. It looks like we already aggroed something. A rather large set of philosophies called the theory of knowledge, and there's a lot to it. Linear thought patterns on how we acquire knowledge and where the ends of that knowledge are, and then circular thoughts where one piece of knowledge justifies piece of knowledge two versus justifies our knowledge about P justifies your knowledge about Q, justifies your knowledge about R, justifies your knowledge about P. Circular. And then the one that really kind of struck a chord with me is called contextualism. And the reason it struck a chord with me is because in order to know that you know, it's dependent on knowing other facts. And all of these things are connected in a web. It's not some of the more technical aspects of reality, like knowing that the sky is blue due to Rayleigh scattering, right? As opposed to refraction due to water in the air. But instead, knowing that 2 plus 2 equals 4. And you know that 2 plus 2 equals 4 because when you add 2 items and you add another 2 items, you know that the concept of those items, 2 pairs of 2, total to a sum of 4. And that's basic mathematics. And I know I'm explaining it poorly, but it made sense. And I think I know I posted a link to the series in the description of I want to say it was Wednesday's Entropia Universe group, but I'll post it in this one too, just so you can check it out. But basically, what contextualism does is it's the content of what you experience, therefore your knowledge is subject to context. And with context, you can claim knowledge, but it only addresses relevant facts. Oh, crap. I gotta return to this guy. So by only addressing relevant facts when dealing with knowledge, you're not subject to a lot of fluff that can convolute. It helps prevent conflation of the facts. And of course, with me trying to figure out, the real question I have, and I've actually started writing an essay on this, is what's the difference between a virtual world and a real one? And what would happen if how would this change if it's a full immersion environment? And even more importantly, what if we don't know we're in a full immersion environment? Obviously, the most poignant idea behind this was The Matrix. But there have been other examples too. Japanese anime has both the Dot Hack series and Sword Art Online, where you get stuck in a game and you know you're in a game, but just because the facts are only true in the game doesn't make them any less true in that context. In Entropia Universe, for instance, that if you kill 100 Phoephoids, you get a reward. Just because it doesn't apply outside of the context of the game doesn't make any difference. Because in the context of this reality we call Entropia, this planet we call Calypso, because it is true in this context, I know that if I kill 500 Phoephoids, I will get a reward. And if I travel out to Argonaut Island and I kill the Argonauts there and I collect all of the research samples again for the umpteenth time, I will get another daily token. So I guess it came to my mind because one of the things you deal with in theory of knowledge is skepticism. And their thing is, okay, so we know that we have two hands. But what if we're actually a brain in a jar? So we don't actually have two hands. But we're subjected to a full immersion simulation where in the simulation we have two hands. And so I was thinking about it and I'm like, well, to the brain in a jar, or to the gamer in a game, that is our reality. Because we don't know anything else. Therefore, as far as we are concerned, we know we have two hands because in the context of our reality, we have two hands with which to interact with that world. So it doesn't matter if the stark reality is that we're a brain in the jar. We know we have two hands so long as the reality that we are subject to says we have two hands. Just like in Entropia Universe, I am a swordsman of some skill. I am a good swordsman. That's literally my title. Just because I'm an intermediate swordsman in real life doesn't change the fact that in the reality of Entropia Universe, I am a good swordsman. Nor does the fact that I'm a good swordsman in Entropia Universe change the fact that I'm an intermediate, so basically a moderate swordsman in real life. In the subject of contextualism, it means that, you know, everything's kind of connected in a web. You know, since with the digitization of humanity becoming a real possibility within our lifetimes, does it really matter that teleportation can't happen in the analog world if you live strictly in a digital one? I guess we have yet to see. I think it'll be very interesting for us to find out. And I want you all to know, I've said it before and I'll probably say it a million times in the future. I am not an expert. Not by a long shot. I'm not some... Oh, one more thing. You know, what if it's an AI? Sorry, I had to throw that out there. Just, I had a few notes on this one because trying to keep my thoughts organized, especially since it's damn near 10 o'clock at night, and I've pretty much been going since 8 o'clock this morning. My whole routine today was literally flipped upside down, so you'll forgive me if I'm just a little off kilter. The thesis for the essay I'm writing is pretty much a distillation of what Kirito said in Sword Art Online. And I know that's becoming kind of a cliche with me. But some things that are said in a lot of these animes and in video games and things like that, they're philosophies distilled from Japanese and Shinto Buddhist culture, which is very philosophical in nature. And I wrote it down, and I'm going to try to find it because I set it aside so I wouldn't forget it and without having to pull open the whole thing. Now the question is, will it be faster for me to find it where I wrote it down, or would it be faster for me to load up my copy of the essay I was working on? Which, of course, I can access from a different terminal than my main computer here. The word is probably not. Apparently I was Not paying attention to where I put my paperwork. Here it is. Who you are in a game is a reflection of who you are in real life. You aren't required to hide your true personality when your real data is hidden behind the guise of an avatar. And I think that really kind of rings, I think that really rings true. Especially in the MMO demographic, right? I mean, we interact with each other on a very fundamental level. And with that level, the way we interact with each other, we can be polite to each other, we can be assholes to each other. Especially in an Entropia universe where actions have real-life consequences. You know, if a pirate shoots you down and steals your stuff, you're out that money. Someone steals a kill from you, you're out the money you used to hit them. That's a mob. And so... And I'm not talking about the morality of it. I'm just strictly speaking, you know, how the personality bleeds through. And the funny thing is in a lot of ways it allows us to kind of be the person we really wished we could be. And I guess you could extrapolate some thoughts about who the pirates really are inside, as opposed to, you know, those who try to go on their merry way and not get shot down. But I've said this before in other videos, you know, even the pirates have a sense of honor. They only shoot down a person once, and then they let them go on their way. And yeah, they may hit them on each direction, or there might be someone on either end, but they don't shoot down a player over and over and over again. For them, it's almost like a profession. They have a certain professional courtesy even for their victims, where I am going to attempt to take anything you have on you because you know better than to bring shit into space. But if I shoot you down, regardless of whether I manage to get something off you or not, I am not going to waste either of our times just to be a dick. And what that really, you know, kind of says to me is, yeah, they can take your money from you, but you have ways to safeguard against it. You could always jump aboard a mothership, and some motherships are even nice enough to let you log out, and they'll give you a cue as to when to log back in so that you're safe. Which, by the way, is a complaint to the pirates, because the pirates attacking motherships would much rather have the mothership require a convoy for some bigger space battles. You know, they're in it for the grand arena is what they really want. And because of the nature of Entropia Universe and the fact that PvP combat is completely a money sink and they're willing to dedicate to it, but most players aren't, they don't really get that thrill. But at the same time, it really kind of plays to that, you know, what is our true personality? You know, and so I honestly think that's why the people who play Entropia are they're so chill. They're very mature. I'm not just talking about because of age restrictions on players, which are easily circumvented. But it's because there's so much work that goes into this game. And because there's real money on the line, it's a virtual analog to real life, or an allegory to real life. But a little better, because we can actually have the profession we want, hunting monsters all day, or mining resources using the probes, or splitting trees and selling the boards, which is actually, I've heard, quite lucrative if you know what you're doing. Or you can craft things. Or you can do other things too. I mean, you can run a taxi service. You can be a cosmetologist or a face shaper without having to go to frickin' medical school for plastic surgery. So, I mean, these are all things you can do in the context of this virtual world, and we can be the person we want to. And so we all interact with each other on a very professional level, which is almost unrivaled, I think, in other MMOs. I mean, in my life, I've played World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, RuneScape, and I played both 11 and 14 for Final Fantasy, by the way. I've played 2 versions of RuneScape. I've played Revelation Online. And of course, Entropia Universe. And in the majority of them, players are pretty much, I mean, yeah, players here are pretty much out for themselves, but players here are courteous, whereas players in those games tend to be jerks. And I mean, if you don't believe me, just enter World of Warcraft and go into Barons. Barons chat is atrocious. Some people think rookie chat can get bad. Oh my god. And so I think that because of that, because there's that allegory to real life, this virtual world reaches down to that part of us that wants that social interaction to be courteous with each other. But that doesn't prevent us from being the person that we are inside. Just because there's a certain social constraint doesn't mean it doesn't mean that we're not the person we are inside, because we're doing the things that we really wish we could do. And in so doing, we created this secondary world for ourselves where we can be that person and act in those ways. Some of us act nobly, some of us are pirates, some of us are, tradespeople who are out to make the ped. Some of them are more honorable than others, where they'll try to bilk players or, skim an extra couple of cents off every transaction or something. And I don't mean skim in the corruption sense, but, pump the prices up just enough to be just a skosh higher than they should strictly be necessary, than is strictly necessary for them to make a profit. So I guess it's a conundrum, and it's one of the things that always got me is that video games are always the first thing scrutinized when something goes wrong. For violence, for aggression, for not paying attention in school, for not keeping up with work, for not keeping up with their friends or social life when relationships fall apart. The video games are always scrutinized, and it's always considered a causal factor as opposed to maybe it's a symptom. It's not a causal factor, it's a symptom. Because for a lot of people, video games are an escape. We play this to forget about our real life for a couple of hours. To be the me we wish we could be. And so that's really the goal of this essay. And I figure I'll be working on it. My original plan was to have it be at kind of an undergraduate level, because I was an undergraduate student. I've got an associate's degree. Whoop-de-flippin'-do. But the more I realized how complex this issue could get, I am really, really scared that this is going to be a 4-year project on the level of a doctoral thesis, and I do not have the experience nor the training to put up a competent, oh my god, I'm tired, a competent defense for something of that magnitude. And so my hope is that I can come up with something that's decent and put the necessary research behind it and have something out there in the next 3-4 years with all the material stacked up to work with it in the event someone does challenge me on it. I mean, what are the chances it's going to get peer reviewed? 1% maybe? It's not like I live in an academic setting. But in this day and age, you always want to make sure you have your sources, because anyone could misquote you or quote you accurately because you didn't understand fully what you were getting yourself into. And all you need to do is purport yourself to be an expert to find yourself in trouble. So I'm going to do some serious, cover my ass. But honestly, this is the direction the world is going. And I know the older 2 generations think that it's a bad thing, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's necessary. I mean, the number of people that we have to deal with in a given day, the number of places we would need to be to conduct business. If I have 7 members of a board scattered all over the world doing negotiations, And in order to hold a board meeting, we only have to strap on a headset and land ourselves in a virtual boardroom. Why wouldn't we do it? Or even jump into Entropia Universe and hold a board meeting sitting around a table in an avatar's apartment so that we can all at least have an idea that we're talking to each other. Because believe it or not, I firmly believe that the ability to look upon someone, even when you're interacting in a virtual world, allows you to make a much deeper personal connection to that person, even if you're just looking at a representation of them rather than their actual person. And so I have the feeling that the utilization of these virtual platforms, Entropia Universe, Second Life, even World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, RuneScape maybe even, or Diablo, because we're able to look upon their avatar and it's a representation of that person, for better or for worse, I think that we are going to end up starting to use these platforms as more than just games. And the more flexible ones like Entropia Universe or Second Life. And I think Entropia Universe is, I wouldn't necessarily say better positioned, but because of the versatility of the platform, because Second Life is really just strictly a social platform, whereas Entropia Universe is a game with a lot of social platform aspects to it. I think it's the better of the two at this moment. Of course, I don't even know if Second Life's still going on. My assumption is that it is. I know it was fairly popular back in the day. But like I said, my hope is that we can develop an understanding of how these platforms affect us, or more importantly, how we affect these platforms. I wouldn't say more importantly, just as importantly, how we can utilize these platforms more effectively. Because these platforms have a lot to them. There's a lot we haven't explored in the name of tradition and, you know, what is right and proper. But who's to say what's right and proper? Most of those things are developed as humanity progresses. And I mean, we build upon the architecture of morality that we have, but there is no rules against using a digital platform. Nowhere in any of that architecture does it say we have to be on a telephone or sitting in front of each other as opposed to sitting across from each other in a virtual world. It just says that we need to be able to look each other in the eye in some way, shape, or form. And so maybe as these maybe as these gain wider acceptance, we'll have fewer problems with them. And I know part of it's because, you know, the boomers and the Xers, they're still, you know, a lot of them are still very analog and they don't want to see the change. And perhaps it's because the whole world upended itself about the same time the millennials graduated from high school or college. Because like I'm an older millennial. I'm 34, so I started college late. So the crash happened in my third year of college, 2008, and it happened to 2007, and it happened to coincide with the birth of my son. And so, of course, the economy crashed. I took my associate's degree instead of finishing my bachelor's due to circumstance, and you know, things just kind of progressed that way. But I think that part of the reason that we are so flexible with dealing with stuff is because we had such hardships just from the get-go, and we're still recovering from it. It's been 10 damn years. And I don't think the majority of us have recovered from what we suffered during the recession just as we were getting out of it. And I'm not trying to turn this into a political statement by any means. It's more like cause and effect. And so, because we're still recovering from that even 10 years later, or we're just barely recovering from it for some of us, some of the younger millennials weren't even out of high school yet, and so they came into the hardship, but they came into it without debt. And so they were able to make a cognitive choice, maybe not to go to college right away, or to pick a more vocational school that cost less. And I'm not saying that, I didn't make mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes. I'll be paying for my mistakes for the next 20 years. But I had a direction I was going with this. I think it's because of our flexibility as a generation and the flexibility of our children, how wired in the children of millennials, so the Generation Zers. And I know Gen Z, Z, I'm going to call them Zers until I'm dead. And I will argue with anyone blue in the face why it doesn't really matter. But between us and the Zers, we're all very digitized. So I think that this is the direction we're going. And this is the direction we're going to continue to go. And nothing's going to stop it, nothing's going to change it. And honestly, the sooner we embrace it with caution, I think the more effective we're going to be in the future. I don't know. You tell me. If you have any ideas or any thoughts on the matter, please drop a comment down below. I would appreciate it. Because, I don't know, man. It's tough. It's a brave new world out there. In a lot of ways, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. We have no clue what we're doing. Maybe things aren't as bad as they all seem. And it's true in a lot of ways. The world is better than it's ever been, but even in chaos, there's a certain amount of order. And even in perfect order, there's a certain amount of chaos. And currently, I can see the chaos, but I'm having a hard time seeing the order. That's all I got, folks. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and what? Oh my god, I don't even know. I'm done. I'm done. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe down below. I really appreciate all of your support. Hey, if you like me, I found out my sister's also a tuber. She's more a slice of life tuber, which, maybe that interests you, and she's also a vegan. And the first rule about being a vegan, never stop talking about being a vegan. I am not a vegan. So check her out. I'll drop a link to her channel in the description down below too. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. You all have a wonderful night.